Hello everyone, this is Manjula Devi P, Assistant Professor, GFGC Kanakpura. In this session, we will discuss about measurement of risk, sources of risk in connection to investment management. In the previous sessions, we have discussed about the meaning of risk, return, investment and all. Just to have a quick recap. So, as you already know, any investment for that matter will have its associated return, and return will always have its associated risk. So, this risk and return goes hand in hand. So, what is the meaning of risk? Risk can be defined as the deviation from the expectation or the chances of deviation from the expectation due to uncertainties. So, whenever there is a chance of uncertainty, so there always exists a risk. So, when we talk about investment, we talk about future returns, we talk about expected returns. So, the expectation might differ, that means the reality might differ from the expectation, that means there exists a risk. Okay. So, in connection to this, let us see what are the sources of risk and how do we calculate the risk, how do we quantify the amount of risk that the investment avenue has. So, in this session I will be using a new term, standard deviation. We will see what is standard deviation, how to calculate it. So, before going to the calculation part, let us see what are the sources of risk, like what are the reason or what are the ways in which we get into this risk situation. First and foremost, we have market risk. As you all know, market is volatile, that means market is never constant, it keeps changing, whether it is stock market, whether it is commodity market, whether it is normal goods and services market. So, the demand supply, the equation keeps changing, isn't it? So, the risk which can arise because of the changes in these variables in the market, the demand supply or the price in the market. So, because of all that, if you get into risk, then that is called as market risk. Then liquidity risk. Liquidity risk is a risk where you are not able to convert your investment into cash at the time when you actually need it, like where you need funds, but your amount is blocked up. So, because of that you are getting into this risk, and that is called as liquidity risk. Then we have concentration risk. Concentration risk means where you have put all your funds in one particular set of securities or one company's securities. So, anything happens you lose or you will get into the problem, you are not diversified your investment, then that is called as concentration risk. Then credit risk. Credit risk means a situation where your debtors or your trade receivables or the people who have to pay you are not paying and you are not able to get the money from them, they are becoming bad debt, then that is called as the credit risk. Then reinvestment risk. So, this risk arises when the investment, when you want to reinvest your money, you are not getting as much returns as you would have got it before, that is called as the reinvestment risk. Then inflation risk. As we all know, inflation causes reduction in the purchasing power, where the prices are high. So, the value of the goods and services that you get with the given amount of money, that means the quantity of goods and services that you can get would reduce. So, here if you are investing your 10,000 for example, after 5 years say you are getting 15,000. Now, if whatever you could get for 10,000 5 years before, now if you are able to get at 15,000, then technically your investment has not grown at all, because of the inflation it is basically stagnant, because there is no value addition to your investment. Then foreign investment risk, as any company or any investor who is operating at the global level, as we know that the currency values keeps changing. So, currency keeps appreciating, depreciating. So, because of this appreciation and depreciation, if you are getting into a loss, then that is foreign investment risk. These are some of the most common sources of risk. Let us see how to measure it, how to calculate the risk. Before calculating it, if we see the degree of risk compared to different type of securities. As I said, each security or each investment avenue will have its own risk return profile. Now, if I plot it in a diagram, x axis I am keeping degree of risk, in the y axis I am keeping rate of return. You can see an upward sloping line, a linear line. So, you can see the starting point is not 0. So, it is starting at a point above 0. That means, even the government securities or any risk free return that we talk about, it is not 0 risk. Of course, it involves a certain amount of systematic risk with it. So, you can see, but of course, that is the least degree of risk, and you can also see the rate of return is also less at that point. Then as you move for the further investment avenues, like you have mortgage loan, debentures, unsecured loan, fixed deposits, then preference shares, then you see equity shares. So, in all such cases you can see the degree of risk is also increasing, at the same time rate of return is also increasing. That means, both are positively correlated. If you want higher return, you should be able to take higher risk, but no investment is 100% risk free. Though we call it as risk free stock, but it does not mean that there is nil risk. It always, every investment has its own systematic risk attached to it. Then the most important, measurement of risk. So, once you know what are the causes of risk, then what are the different risks involved in the different type of investment. So, I need to know how to calculate it, quantify it. So, we can qualitatively say, yeah, government securities are less risk, equity share is more risk. So, we can just say qualitatively, but how do we say that, how can we say that it is less risk or more risk? So, for that we need the help of statistics. So, we use a statistical tool, most commonly used tool as a standard deviation. So, here we are calculating the risk, degree of risk in terms of numbers. Basically, what does standard deviation gives us? It measures the dispersion around the expected or average mean value. That means, if I say 10% is the average return that I can expect, if the standard deviation is like where the deviation is not much, if your returns are around 10%, near to 10%, then the degree of risk is less. But you have a chance of getting say 5%, at the same time you can also have a chance of getting 25%. That means, there is too much of dispersion from the expected return or average return that we can say. That means, that involves more amount of risk. So, how to calculate it? We will see. Anyway, we have this formula. So, standard deviation has its own symbol, then square root of R1 minus ER whole square into PI, but this looks little tedious or technical, but the concept is actually simple. So, here we are calculating the expected return. What is the expected return? By considering the probability of returns. Then we compare that expected return with the returns that it could arise. Then we calculate the standard deviation. I think with one example you will understand it better. Okay, let us take this data. Following data related to an investment proposal which involves rupees 100 lakhs. Calculate the expected return and standard deviation. They have given one investment proposal which involves 100 lakhs as an initial outlay. So, here they have given 3 different expected outcomes. Like if I am pessimistic, then I can expect only 10% of return. most likely, generally if I look around, that type of investment may be giving 12% return. Or if I am very optimist about the investment proposal, then I may expect 14% return. That means, so I have 3 sets of return. So, I can get 10% or 12% or 14%. Now, whenever we talk about this type of standard deviation, the expected returns, there is always probability attached to it. What is the probability of getting this pessimistic return? What is the probability of getting most likely return or optimist return? So, now they have given the probability attached to each type of return that I can expect. So, now I have rate of return and probability, and there are 3 possible outcomes. Now, keeping this basic data, let us calculate the expected return. Calculation of expected return is very simple. So, here we express it as ER is equal to RI into PI. RI means return of the ith outcome, PI means probability of the ith outcome. Here we have 3 set of things. So, we have I is nothing but that 1, 2, 3. So, probability is also given for 3 set 0.25, 0.5 and one more 0.25. The expected returns or the return that they have given for each outcome is 10, 12 and 14. I just have to multiply probability with the rate of return, then I get the ER of each outcome, and then if I total it, then I will get the expected return. It is just probability into the rate of return for each possible outcome. So, I got expected return as 12. Now, they are asking the standard deviation. So, here I have to calculate what is the deviation that it can happen from the ER, that is expected return. So, what I will do? I will make a table. I will take what are the 3 outcomes, that is 1, 2, 3, which was optimistic, pessimistic, most likely. Then the rate of return attached to it, it was 10%, 12% and 14%. Then I take the ER, expected return, which is 12. Okay, I take 12 for all 3 outcomes. Then I will calculate the deviation. So, deviation is nothing but the difference between the expected return and rate of return and the expected return. So, for the first outcome, rate of return is 10, expected return is 12. So, 10 minus 12 I get minus 2. For the second one, both are 12. So, deviation is 0. For the third one, it is rate of return is 14, expected return is 12. So, the difference is plus 2. Then I will square it, I will make it as square. So, minus 2 into minus 2 I get 4, 0 into 0 is 0, again 2 into 2 is 4. Now, I multiply this squared deviation with the probability. Now, if I multiply it with it, then I get the weighted square deviation. Once I total the weighted square deviation, then in order to find the standard deviation, I just have to take the square root of it. So, here I got weighted square deviation as 2. Now, I just have to take the square root of 2. So, the answer what I got is 1.414. Suppose if there is another investment opportunity where the standard deviation is say 2, the actual answer which comes to as 2. Then if I have to compare in which investment proposal standard deviation is more, that means that is having more risk. Suppose if standard deviation was just 0.2, that means it is less than 1, that means the deviation is very less from the expectation. So, the risk is also less. So, here by this we are actually measuring the dispersion from the average mean. So, it is giving us the information about the deviation that can happen. So, more deviation means more risk attached to it, less deviation means the less risk. So, through this standard deviation we use or we calculate the risk attached to the investment proposals, and the ground rule is more deviation more risk, less deviation less risk. Just to have a quick recap. So, risk is inevitable in any investment proposal. There are many sources of risk we discussed, like market risk, credit risk, reinvestment risk, concentration risk, foreign exchange risk. Likewise, there are many risks. Because of all these sources, you may actually get into the situation where your expectation is deviated. I am sorry, your outcome is deviated from the expectation or possibility of incurring a loss. Then for measuring it, we use standard deviation, we take the help of statistics. Through standard deviation, we measure the risk, and higher the deviation, higher the risk, and vice versa. So, risk and return are usually positively correlated, as I was talking. So, if you are taking higher risk, you can expect higher return. So, always they do get positively correlated. So, these are the references which you can refer, and in the exam you can expect the question on the calculation of standard deviation. Anyway, it is a very simple calculation. First you have to find out the expected return by considering probability and the rate of return given, then use that expected return to calculate the deviation. So, then every year usually for the numericals they give this calculation of standard deviation. Please concentrate on solving the sums. Thank you very much. Let us meet in the next session with a new topic. Thank you.